All right, everyone. So in this video, what we are going to discuss is hand position, fingering, and finger position. I get a lot of questions about, I'm reading a piece of music. How do I know where to put my hand? How do I know what finger I should use? And all sorts of things like that, which for a beginner is hard to figure out at first, So first, we'll talk about a couple different common finger movements, because once you understand the common finger movements, that will help you be able to analyze a piece. You see it, you'll know, what finger movement would make sense, such as tucking your thumb or putting, one of your fingers over your hand, right? So we'll look into things like that, and then we'll discuss, how we analyze a melody and say where we put our hand. All right, so be sure to go to the description of this video to download the PDF to this piece so you can follow along. I will zoom in and show you at points, but it's definitely easiest to have your own copy. So we're just going to look at about the first 4 to 8 measures, somewhere around there. So if we look at this piece, right, we can see we're in the key of G major, sure, things like that. But let's look at this, literally just the first 2 bars. Because one thing you have to understand is you're not always going to be able to prepare your hand for the entire piece. Right? You really can only prepare for maybe one bar, maybe as much as 4 bars if it's an easier piece, maybe as the whole piece if it's a very easy piece, but most pieces your hand's going to have to move around to different positions. They won't be set the whole piece. So that's important to understand. So let's look at just these first 2 measures, right? We're just going to look at the right hand. So I crossed out the finger numbers they had just so we don't see them. It's not that they're wrong, right? It's not that they're bad. They're probably a fine suggestion, but we want to figure it out on our own. So the first thing we want to do is figure out, in this little melody here, what is our lowest note? As we can see, right, the note would be G. This is our lowest note here. Okay, then we want to say, what is our highest note? Well, there it is. That's another G, but an octave higher. So we are spanning an octave here, right? Well, we only have 5 fingers, so we can't put our hands on all 8 notes. But let's take a look at that, right? So we're on this G here, and we're going to need to get all the way up to that G there. So let's talk about where our hand should be for this. Now, another thing to remember, there's always multiple options, right? There's never just one way to finger a piece, right? There's tons of different options. So the first thing we're going to do though, right, is we said our lowest note was G here. Well, with our right hand, what is our lowest finger? Meaning which finger is closest to the lowest note? And it would be our thumb. So I'm going to start with my thumb there, because it's the lowest note and I know our melody is going up this way and nothing is going to be lower than this, so a thumb kind of sets that baseline, that bottom outline for you, right? So here's where we're starting our thumb. Now we want to be able to get all the way up to this G here. Technically we can try and start in a position like this, right, and outline our lowest note to our highest note, so lowest note, highest note, and we're setting our outline there. Then the 2 inner notes, as we can see, are B, D, D, right? So we're just playing 3 different notes, a G, a B, and a D. Well, 4 technically, and a G, right? This D is the same there. So 4 different notes. Well, that works for us, right? So we have a G and a G, right? Our lowest note and our highest note. And then our inner notes are B and D. So I'm going to set my hand up something like this, right? Lowest note to highest note, and I could also get on the notes in between. So there's the melody. Right? Now, is there other options? Of course, right? You don't have to have your pinky already stretched. You can start basically with your thumb, index finger, and middle finger on G, B, D, and then after you play D, turn your hand outward a little bit. That will help you get to that high G, right? And then back. So that's one way you could potentially do it. Now, are there other methods? Of course. Technically, you could probably start with your second finger and do, right? It wouldn't be the most comfortable way to do it, not the easiest, but it still works. So that's why I want you to understand that when you see finger numbers on sheet music, it's a suggestion. It's saying, hey, here's an option. Here's one option that will work that we're going to offer you, but it may not be the best option for you. You want to try out different fingering to see what's the most comfortable. For me, I know when I'm playing, right, this is basically a G chord and then getting to the octave there. I usually use thumb, index, middle, 1, 2, 3, 5, right? Technically, you could do 1, 2, 4, 5 there. It's a little harder to stretch from your ring finger to your pinky there. I find it easier to stretch from the middle to pinky, so that's why I choose 3 there. But does 4 work? Yes, it still works. So that's how I would go about it, right? Let's look at the next little phrase here, and let's think that same process, right? What's our lowest note? What's our highest note, right? We have an A here, D, F in the middle, and a D there, right? So that's going to be A, D, F, A, right? So, okay, once again, very similar. I know you can't see up here, but I'm on A up here, right? Very similar way I'm going to finger it. 1, 2, 3, 5. Just like that, right? So 2, 3, 4, 1. Right? Just like that. So now we talk about hand position going from here to here, right? So these are two different hand positions. This one has our thumb on G. This has our thumb on A. So how do we get there? Well, we play this melody first, and then lucky for us, we have a quarter note rest here. That little rest there is going to be enough time to shift our hand up a note, basically, right? Going from here, it's going to give us enough time. Here's the quarter note, 2, 3, 4, 1. Right? So we have to have our hand be flexible, right? Right, you see how I do that turn there. I go from there to there. Two different hand positions, all within 4 measures, right? And then the piece keeps going, right? I can keep going and go through the rest of it, but that's really, the main thing to think about whenever you're reading music, right? Is, use, common sense essentially with, what fingers could work, and then understanding that there's multiple fingerings that could work, right? So another thing to remember, right? Like I said, I mentioned I would talk about fingerings, right? So let's just talk about some common hand movements your hand can do, right? One thing is when you're going up, let's say this melody went past G, but I'll do it down here just so we can see, right? Let's say the melody went G, B, D, G, B. Well, how do we get there, right? Well, common things we can do is when we're going up with our right hand, it's very common to tuck your thumb, right? Just like that, right? Now that allows my hand to play these first 2 notes, but then instead of playing D with my middle finger, I tuck my thumb there, open my hand up, and just like that, I'm in a new position, right? So that's one very common method. For your right hand, your thumb can go under. That can allow you to keep getting up the keyboard. For your left hand, your thumb would tuck under and allow you to keep going lower. Now, when your right hand is going lower, let's say we needed to get, right, let's say, A, G, D, B, G. Obviously, we don't want to do our thumb twice. So with our right hand, what we can do is we can cross over our thumb. So when your right hand's going down, you can cross over with most fingers. I can use my second finger, I could use my third, I could use my fourth, right? It all depends on what would be happening next. If the melody was going to keep going lower after this A, or this G, I would probably use my fourth, so then I have more fingers down here for me. If the melody was maybe coming right back to the B, I would probably want to use my index finger, right? So this is why I say there's choices. It all depends on what's coming next. You're never going to be able to just set your hand and that's it for the rest of the piece, right? It's going to need to move around. Now the last thing I'll kind of talk about with our hands, right, is that, like I said, they're going to need to move. So we need to get comfortable, right? Let's say you're playing something like that, right? Well, right, there's no way to go from here to there without, without lifting my hand. So you do need to get comfortable knowing that sometimes there is not going to be a movement where you can tuck your thumb or go over. You're literally just going to need to lift your hand up and set it back on the piano. Now I know that seems scary, right? Because we get our hand position, so we try and hold on to the keys as best as we can. I see beginners all the time doing whatever they can to not let their hand leave the piano because they're afraid they're gonna not come back down. But you gotta let your hands be free and have that feeling to move. If you ever watch an advanced pianist play, you'll notice their hands float over the keys, right? They don't slide them across because that makes your playing tense, makes you stiff. It's going to be hard to keep tempo. Everything's going to be dynamically just very harsh when you're, sliding your fingers. So sometimes you are just going to need to press, let your hand lift up, and come back down in that new position you need to be. All right, so I hope this video was very helpful in an introduction to, being able to discover finger positions, hand positions all on your own when you read a piece of music. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe as I have tons of videos. If you ever have questions for me, you can comment below. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what tutorials you want, what you want to see, what you want to learn, or you can always email me directly, digitalpianoschool@gmail.com. I always get back to people as soon as I can. Anyways, thank you so much for watching once again. Please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.